I always thought family meant safety, meant trust, meant shared blood, shared memories, shared legacy, the kind that doesn't get auctioned off when you're not looking. My family didn't just betray me. They erased me, piece by piece, moment by moment, like I was an inconvenience, not a daughter, not a granddaughter, not even human. Just a wallet with a heartbeat, a name on a deed, a bank account they didn't earn. It started with a watch, my grandfather's watch, gold heavy, engraved with his initials, and the word endure. It survived war, fire, and to generations. But it couldn't survive my sister's greed. By the time I found out, it was already gone, sold, vanished. Like I didn't matter, like legacy could be priced. And that moment, that single betrayal, unraveled everything. I thought it was just a watch. But it was never just a watch. It was the beginning of the end. And maybe the beginning of something else. The first lie was small. A missing receipt, a changed story, a shrug from my mother. But I let it go. It was December, and my daughter had just turned 17. She'd gotten her college acceptance letter that same day, pre-med, just like her grandfather, the one who raised me, the one whose name she carries. My father passed when I was 12. My mother remarried when I was 15. And for most of my life, I called my grandfather my only real parent. He lived with us after his stroke. My sister Ashley and I took turns helping him. Or at least, I thought we did. When he passed, he left very little in writing. No formal will, just verbal wishes. He trusted us to honor them, to do the right thing. I should have known better. The watch was supposed to be mine. He'd told me so, on the porch swing, 2 weeks before he died. His hands were trembling, but his voice wasn't. This isn't just gold, baby girl. This is blood. Promise me you'll keep it, even when it gets heavy. And I promised. I remember the feel of his fingers curled around mine. I remember the smell of the fall leaves. I remember the weight of that promise. And still, I didn't see it coming. Not until it was too late. The funeral was small, just family, a few neighbors, and the pastor he always called Kid. Ashley looked beautiful. She always does. Long, dark hair, pale skin, perfect posture. She cried at the right moments, held Mom's hand, smiled softly when people said how strong she was. I stood beside them, the second act, the side note, the daughter who never caused trouble, never asked too many questions. Until I did, until I had to, and by then, the watch was gone. It was 2 weeks after the burial. We were cleaning out Grandpa's room. I opened the top drawer of his nightstand, empty. I checked the closet, the lockbox, nothing. Just a note taped to the inside of the safe door. Gone through already, eh? I asked Mom. She blinked twice, then tilted her head. Ashley said she gave it to you. You didn't get it? My heart sank. No, I didn't. Well, I'm sure it's just a mix-up. Ask her. So I did, and that's when the unraveling began. It was just a watch, Ashley said, shrugging, like it wasn't the last thing I had. It didn't even work. The back was cracked. I thought you said it was yours. He told me to handle things after. Said you'd be too emotional. She dropped the last shirt into the basket, looked at me like I was being difficult. It's gone. Don't make it a thing. But it was a thing. A huge gut punch thing. Not just because of the watch, but because of what it meant. And because I knew, with a hollow certainty, that she was lying. 2 days later, I found the pawn shop listing. My friend Chris works in estate recovery. I sent him the serial number. It sold 3 days after your grandfather passed, he said, his voice tight, to a private collector. Cash. No ID. I didn't cry. Not then. But something in me went still, like a light had gone out, or maybe turned on for the first time. The watch was worth $12,000. The house, more than 10 times that. And suddenly, I began to wonder, what else was already gone? What else had she handled? What else had my silence cost me? My daughter came home from school that day, exhausted, hungry. She had a hole in the sole of her shoe. I asked if her science trip had been approved. She shrugged. Too expensive. Misty said not to worry. We'll figure something out. And I realized I hadn't just lost a watch. I'd lost time, money, options. All while someone else lived like she deserved it. And I was done staying quiet. The house was supposed to be split. After Grandpa died, we agreed. Sell it, split it 50-50. Use our shares how we needed. Mine would have gone to my daughter's college. Hers, well, I figured she'd use it for clothes, cars, whatever Ashley needed that week. But months went by, no listing. No updates, just vague texts from mom. Ashley's handling it. You know how good she is with this stuff. I asked to see the paperwork, the listing agreement, the agent. Soon, they said, just be patient. Until one morning, I drove by, just to check, and saw someone else's car in the driveway. A woman was unloading groceries. A kid on the porch. I got out, walked up. Excuse me, can I help you? The woman blinked. I live here. My stomach twisted. You bought this place? Last month. Cash deal. The seller was a dream. She smiled. I feel so lucky. I smiled back, but my fists were clenched. Yeah, lucky. Ashley had sold the house without telling me, without asking, without my signature. And somehow the papers had cleared. When I confronted her, you weren't even using it. I needed it more. Get over it. Ashley didn't blink. You've always been so dramatic. It's just money. You'll earn more. Chill. That night I sat in the car, outside my daughter's school, watching the lights go out. Kids laughing, leaving in groups. She walked out alone, tired, backpack heavy, shoes scuffed, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her suffer because I was too polite to make noise. It was time to make noise, time to take it back. I met with my lawyer again. This time, I brought documents, messages, emails, screenshots, bank transfers, video clips from the front door camera. Every piece of proof I had, and we began fraud, forgery, civil suit, restitution. I filed everything. Ashley acted shocked, played dumb, cried in front of my mom. She's trying to destroy me. It's jealousy. I was just helping. But this time, no one believed her, not even my daughter, who finally said, with a quiet fury, you lied to us, you stole from her, and you let me think we were broke. While you bought new shoes, while I skipped meals, while I worked weekends, you let me suffer, and smiled. The court date is set, 3 weeks from today. Ashley's lawyer already tried to negotiate. Let's be civil. No need to make it ugly. My reply? She's sold ugly. I'm just buying it back. And the best part, that same watch, the one she sold, I found it. The collector's daughter contacted me. My dad passed. I saw your story. This belongs to you. I can feel it. I offered to buy it. She said no, just pay shipping. It's your legacy, not ours. It arrived yesterday. Gold, heavy, engraved, endure. And I finally understood what he meant. I'm enduring, and I'm reclaiming, not just the house, not just the money, but the truth, the legacy, the voice they tried to silence. They thought they won, but I'm not done. I stayed silent for 2 days. I watched the rain touch the glass, felt the silence coat the furniture, as if the house had paused, holding its breath with me, afraid to stir the truth. Then Caleb came in. Of course, he was missing the watch, but so was something deeper, a trust I had held quietly, a belief that family protects family, that blood at least respects legacy, even if it doesn't love you. I didn't scream or shout, didn't throw the teacup I held, didn't call them thieves outright, though they were exactly that. Instead, I smiled slightly and asked about dinner plans. They exchanged glances, a mix of surprise and maybe guilt, but quickly those vanished. Denial was their first instinct. Then came justification, then dismissal. Then finally, a casual shrug as if it was their right, as if legacy were negotiable, as if I should understand. It was just a watch, they said, but it was never just anything. Not when it held his skin, not when it held his words, not when it marked time deliberately with the weight of memory. I thought of all those stories he told me, all those memories we shared in that room. How could they strip all that away so casually? The answer, I suppose, is family. Family strips everything away, even you. I walked back out to the rain. It felt good on my face. It tasted salty on my lips. I had cried twice in my life, I realized. Once when he died. Once when I found the note. But there would be no third time. No tears for being betrayed, for being used, for being lied to. I began visiting records offices, learned the language of deeds, began tracing family assets quietly, what had been sold recently, what had been transferred. Suddenly, what names appeared on papers. I discovered more than theft. I discovered careful, legal betrayal. They had started liquidating quietly, not just the watch but more. A small cabin he once owned, a library he built in secret. He had written about both places in his journal. He loved the cabin, called it his sanctuary. And the library held hundreds of books he collected, rare editions, signed copies, annotated pages. Tracing one house's sale led me to a cousin I'd never met, a woman named Layla Harper, who bought it under market value, signed papers processed through Caleb, and paid with granddad's bonds. That was when I knew this wasn't just desperation or need. It was entitlement woven in greed, a family feeding on itself, one legacy meal at a time, until nothing sacred remained. That's when I began preparing differently. No more whispered emotions alone. No more shock or sadness. I wanted paper trails, recordings, documents. Everything they thought I couldn't gather. Everything they assumed I'd overlook because I was just the niece. My lawyer's name was Claudia Diaz, a woman with steel in veins, who once sued her own brother when he falsified their mother's will. She looked at my documents silently, then said, "We'll make them choke." I loved her from that moment, not because she promised victory, but because she saw through silence. She didn't ask me to smile, didn't say family means forgiveness. She saw theft where it stood. Together, we reviewed everything. The original will, notarized copies, the sudden deed transfers afterward, the strange adjustments to valuation, how appraisals had dropped strategically to allow cheap family acquisitions. She advised me to stay quiet, to play the family's game, let them believe I knew nothing, so they wouldn't destroy records, so they wouldn't scramble defense stories, so their arrogance would stay loud. And they were arrogant. After our fight, Caleb rarely invited me over. So when he did, I went. He poured whiskey with fake warmth, told me how everyone is struggling, that granddad wouldn't want division, that legacy shouldn't divide siblings. I smiled with small grace, told him I agreed deeply that love matters more than stuff, even while he wore granddad's cufflinks stolen, just like everything else, as if memory were a costume. As months passed, I waited, researched, organized, gathered witness statements from the librarian and the maid, both of whom had seen Caleb take things from the house. Claudia began the filings quietly, a court petition for discovery rights to trace back asset manipulation, to question power of attorney transfers, to force forensic financial audits. We were hunting the blood rats. Meanwhile, Caleb seemed surprised when I moved back into the house. Technically speaking, I had squatter's rights. The house was still untransferred. Though paperwork had been initiated, they didn't expect me inside. It didn't think I'd light the fireplace, restore the study where he kept warm metals hidden, where his journal was tucked deep behind a false bottom drawer compartment, where his last words remained untouched, written just 3 weeks before death. To the one who remembers legacy, not just blood or tradition alone, I leave the house and watch in the stories that shape them. Do with them what honors love, not just what pleases ego. It wasn't a legal document, but it was proof of intent, proof of what he wanted truly, written in his final days, signed in his frail handwriting, witnessed by the mailman Edwin. Claudia wept reading that page. It's not enforceable completely, but it will make the judge pause, especially with everything we've gathered, especially with the watch already sold, especially if you testify honestly. And I would testify completely, not with tears, but truth, not to shame them entirely, but to return memory its dignity, to remind them this wasn't currency, this was a man's whole life. The court date was set, late October, golden leaves falling. I arrived in charcoal suit, hair tied back, without accessories, wearing no jewelry at all, except a tiny compass necklace, the one he gave me, which always pointed north, just like him. Across from me sat Caleb, slick in tailored gray fabric, whispering with his overpriced lawyer, trying to act calm, collected, but tapping his pen nervously against the table like truth was calling out rhythm. My statement was simple. I told the court everything. The childhood stories with granddad, the day he showed me the watch, the fingerprints left on its back, the letter he wrote before death. Claudia presented the financial patterns, transfers that reeked of premeditation, discrepancies in appraisal and valuations, connections between Caleb and Layla, emails that hinted at collusion, even forged signatures on paperwork. The judge didn't decide instantly, but I saw his posture change, the way his fingers steepled, the way he looked at Caleb, like watching a kid cheat Monopoly, not for need, but for dominance. That night, I slept peacefully again, back in Granddad's old armchair. The court hadn't ruled fully yet, but I knew we were winning. But I knew we were winning because I had told the truth, because truth always outlives inheritance games. The will was read, in hushed tones, surrounded by velvet walls, thick tension, and the faces of people who never truly saw me as family anymore, as a threat to their inheritance. And I didn't flinch, not once. The lawyer's voice, slow and deliberate, cut through the room like glass. The house is not in dispute. It was transferred 4 months ago to its rightful heir by deed independent of this current will. Evelyn choked, a cough of shock, spilling the coffee she never drank. Todd just stared, pale and motionless, a man realizing too late that his clever silence cost him. My uncle blinked once, then twice. I don't understand, Evelyn whispered, clutching at straws in thin air. Dad never said anything to me. He said I'd inherit everything, that I would manage the estate, that this isn't possible. It's fraud. Actually, it's protection, I said, my voice calm, measured, quiet justice. Before Granddad passed, he suspected manipulation, so he took legal steps, privately. He gave me everything in trust. I didn't even know until recently. The lawyer nodded, holding up documents bound in wax, signed and notarized. Mr. Arthur Finch, acting independently, reassigned ownership, before he died, to secure legacy from coercion. Miss Finch owns the house outright. You could have heard a pin drop had it not been for Evelyn's breathing, loud, labored, like a woman unraveling. Todd stood, swore under his breath and stormed out, slamming the door. He didn't even say goodbye. And for once, I felt peace, not satisfaction, but something deeper. Closure, carved from silence and pain. Justice, not with gavel in court, but with whispers, documents and memory, and the weight lifted like smoke. This isn't over, Evelyn hissed, approaching me, eyes glossy with rage. You tricked him. You manipulated him. You waited until he was weak, then swooped in, like a vulture. This was supposed to be mine. No, I said, standing slowly, facing her with full clarity. It was never yours, Evelyn. You just believed you deserved it. That's not legacy. That's entitlement's illusion. You lost this long ago. I gave him my best years. She barked, her voice cracking dry. While you were gone, traveling, forgetting, I was the one who stayed, who cleaned his wounds, cooked dinners. Don't you think he didn't notice that? He did notice, I replied, pulling out an envelope. She'd seen the same one she once burned or thought she had, but didn't. This was his letter to you, the real one. I saved it. She paused, hands trembling slightly, before snatching the letter open. Her eyes moved, line by line, lips pressed tight, rage deflating slowly. And then she folded it back, hands still shaking. She couldn't speak. He knew, Evelyn, I whispered, my voice thick with old tears. He knew about the selling, about the lies, the signatures forged. He told me not to hate, but he didn't want you rewarded. Outside the office, the sky wept, rain sliding down, stone windows silently. But in my chest, sunlight bloomed, not in joy, not revenge's thrill, but in final understanding and grace. This was what justice looked like. 3 months later, I moved into the house slowly, each box, memory-laden and bittersweet. Every corner whispered, old echoes of him, the grandfather clock he wound daily, the paint-chipped banister, my childhood handprint. It was mine now, all of it. But not just for me, no. I turned it into something bigger, a scholarship fund in his name, a reading room in the old den, photos of him on the walls, stories of kindness beneath each frame. Children came with scraped knees, wide eyes, and borrowed books. They sat where I once did, on his lap, in his chair, and his presence filled the air, soft, warm, never truly gone. One day, a letter arrived, unmarked envelope, shaky handwriting. Inside was a photo, faded. It was of me and him, age 6, and on the back, one line, the time you gave mattered more than any watch ever could. The twist, one final truth. 6 months later, I was cleaning, going through drawers and loose envelopes, and I found another key, unlabeled. Tucked inside was a folded map and a handwritten note in code. Granddad's handwriting. I stared in disbelief. It led to a deposit box downtown, in an old credit union. The box contained cash, quite a lot, but more than that, documents, shares, patents, silent equity in businesses I never even knew he owned. The watch had bought more than memories. It had bought time and security. Investments he made under everyone's nose. The man was a silent genius, and he left it all to me, not because I asked, Because I stayed. Because I listened when no one did. Because I came back when it mattered. Because family isn't inherited, it's chosen. And I chose him, again and again, even when it cost me everything. And he saw that quietly always. Now I sit here, watching sunrises from the same porch, different heart, no longer broken, but rebuilt gently, layer by layer, memory by memory. And when the wind whispers at dusk, I swear, I hear him laugh, not a ghost, but a blessing, not regret, but gratitude's echo, not revenge, but reclamation of love. He gave me time and silence, and in that silence, I found everything, even myself, especially myself.